welcome to Run with Purpose. This is episode number 60. For those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love if you would subscribe, and as always, you can reach out to me on all of the socials at flores.run. We have a treat for you today. We have another special guest. She's super motivating. If you need to follow her on socials, and we'll get into that later, she'll make you get outside and run. Like, you'd be like, what are you doing? You need to get outside and get some shit done. But Kelly is a certified RRCA running coach, offering coaching through her company Stretch Run Coaching. She's been running for over 20 years and actually has similar goals as me, to run all 50 states and the world major marathons. Kelly, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun little conversation. Before we get into anything, how about you let the listeners know maybe just a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I'm a big runner. And I started my first marathon was back in 2001. I was a senior in college when I ran my first marathon. And I didn't really know where it would take me. And I did fairly well in the first one. Senior in college, don't really know what you're doing. And found that I love the marathon. It's my favorite distance out of all the races that I've run, and ran a couple outside of Illinois, and qualified for Boston in one of those. So went and ran Boston, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, I had 3 or 4 states underneath my belt. And I'm like, hey, maybe I should look at running, traveling, going to see. So that's where the 50-state journey started. My husband is not a marathoner, but he loves to travel. So it became something that the two of us did together. He is the best Sherpa, the best race husband there ever was. And that's how the 50 states journey started. And then a little past that, we started the World Majors goal. So that one, I ran Berlin in 2019. So that was my first international race. And then I became a running coach I think I started my business in 2018. So I've been doing it for a little over 2.5 years now. Because I'm clearly passionate about running, and decided maybe we could do something with this and help share this passion with others. So
for sure. I think it's one of those things where I have such adoration for coaches and that sort of thing, because I knew growing up playing like baseball and stuff like that, like I loved baseball and I could coach it very well because I knew it through and through. And sometimes people don't think with running and that sort of thing that some people don't think about coaching in that same aspect. You're like, no, you just go out and run. You're like, no, but there's a lot of stupid things you can do that can hurt you, not just physically, but mentally. And how do you kind of keep pushing through when things don't kind of go your way? The coach kind of helps you get back on track.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, and I think for me too, like I know some people not grow up, but like there are communities that running coaches are prevalent and people know about coaches. And then there's somewhere it's just your runner. And that's how I was. My family is not a history of runners. Like this lady I babysat for in college was a marathoner, and that's how I first got into it. I was not a runner. I was a basketball and volleyball player, and running was punishment. Right. And so the fact that I am where I'm at now is kind of like, I would have never predicted this for my life, but like I said, I've only been a coach for 2.5 years, but I have so much history of running that I think being able to bring that before even the coaching aspect and just the passion of running itself is huge, because I think I just have a lot of experience in the running form before even introducing into the coaching world. And so I can use that now into what I've learned from coaching and apply both aspects to it.
Yeah. So. You kind of, you learned through experience of what you did, and then being doing it for so long and seeing other people and how they've succeeded, what's helped them, you can kind of formulate general population wise, these are helpful things for everyone. And then obviously tailor things based off of the individual client and person, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. You said that the marathon is your favorite distance. Why do you say that?
It's such a good question. I was just talking with someone about this yesterday. I think for me, the marathon takes it to a different level. I think it pushes your body just over the edge of the point of being comfortable that you don't quite get in other races, and the mental strength that it takes to complete marathons, in addition to the physical strength, I think is just it's almost a sickness that us runners have, that it's like, yes, let's push us to this level of insanity and let's do it again and sign up to pay to do it. Okay. So I love the euphoria that comes with it, and just everything about it.
Yeah, that was that was just more of a personal like ask, because every time everyone has their own reasons for running and kind of why they continue to toe a starting line when we have starting lines. And it's just always interesting to see like with the distances that people like to run. Cause I have a buddy that has, his goal was to qualify for Boston and then actually get into Boston. He qualified like 3 or 4 times, but just barely. So he missed that time cutoff. And then he finally ran Boston, and he's thought about now, he's like, well, maybe I'll go into triathlons. Or he's like, I actually probably prefer the half marathon distance because I can, the training cycle's shorter and I can do this. So it's always interesting to me just to hear other people's mindsets and how they choose those distances. But today we're going to talk a little bit about consistency, and it kind of goes into this idea of running multiple races and kind of being motivated to go through, and obviously the coaching aspect of it. So how, like, this is a very broad, high level question just to start the conversation, is how would you kind of define what are the best like tips or the best things that we can do to make sure that we're consistent in our training? Because we'll be talking specifically about running here, but how do we stay consistent in our running and training?
Well, I think, the past year has been a challenge for everybody to stay consistent, because it's easier, I guess, to be consistent when you have a race coming up for. So you can have a plan and you can have a focus and you have something set out and a goal at the end that you know is there. And then enter 2020 and that all went out the window. And so being able to find consistency through the last year is definitely in a different ballgame, I guess. But I would say having accountability, whether it's through friends, whether it's through a coach, whether it's through a journal, a personal accountability that you write down, but something that's going to hold you accountable to getting out the door and getting yourself up and doing it. And I mean, that's my number one thing, is I think that accountability piece, whatever form works for you, is the hugest piece of it. I think setting an alarm, making sure that you don't just let the day go by, because I'm a morning worker-outer. I will do it in other times, but it's not my preference. I don't love the alarm though. People like, when I first met you, you were running at like 3 a.m., 20 miles, and then COVID's happened and I don't have to. Right. My husband's not going into work. My kids have gotten older. I don't actually have to wake up early to run. And yet I still do. Although if I'm solo, I don't do it as much. If I'm meeting someone, I'm out the door. But if it's my choice, I'm like, well, I'll choose a couple extra hours of sleep if I can,
Yeah. I love that aspect of the same kind of thing as I used to run. I wake up at 5 a.m., 7 days a week, because that's when our dog eats. So we kind of trained our dog to eat this way. So it's like, hey, this works out well. I'll just get up. Right. But now, like, working from home, I'm like, well, I don't have to be into the office until 9, but I don't have my 45-minute bus commute anymore. So I'm like, well, like, I guess I can, and it's not even sleep in. Man, it just got dark. I didn't even open those blinds. It's not that I slept in. It's I would then just like get on my computer or do other things. It's like, no, get out the door. I had that, I literally this morning with my wife, I was like, I needed to get 8 miles in, but I'm like, all right, do I wait until you leave? So, because I like starting her car since it's, freezing here. I say freezing, but it's like 30, 38 right now. And it's
true. I think we're turning a corner. Spring is coming.
Oh, take that, groundhog. But the idea of like, so I wanted to start a car and I was like, okay, do I run now and just get it over with, out the door at like 5:45, or do I wait until 7:15? And it was just like, no, you lazy, just get out now, because if you're going to hold it off, things are going to get stiff, and then something's going to come up. And I'm on call at work this week, so it's like you're going to get a text message and something's going to happen, and then it ruins everything. Your run's not as good because your mind's not clear and focused. And I had an amazing run, just trying to dodge ice here and there still, but it was a great run. And then afterwards, you kind of realize like, okay, that's why I did it. That makes sense.
Well, and you never regret it. I mean, you might regret the alarm, or you might regret getting out the door, but you never regret it when it's over. So it's always worth it.
Yeah, it's a good feeling once you get back into that. Once you get back home or whatever, to kind of feel that like release, and it's like, hey, now I can start my day. And it's like, people look at me like when in the morning, they're just like, why are you so awake already? Like, you don't drink coffee, you don't do this. I was like, no, because I ran 8 miles and it was a good pace and I felt great about it. And I'm like, let's go. Like, I might do a lunch workout too. Let's make it a thing, But I think your point of the accountability is so important. of being consistent. And I tell people all the time, like I share things on social media about events I'm doing or stupid things that I'm planning, not to like brag or anything like that of, hey, look what I'm doing, but it's so I can make sure I'm held accountable to other people of like, hey, I just told 500 people that I'm doing this. Right. And it's like, I don't want my foot in my mouth when I don't succeed or I don't even attempt whatever it is. It's like, no, I'm, take a screenshot and put it on the story of like 5 a.m. alarm. And it's like, but if I don't get out of bed at 5 a.m., I'm making myself a liar. Yeah.
It's so true. I think social media, whatever pros and cons you have with it, it's definitely a community that you find that helps motivate you and inspire you and also hold you accountable to like what you're doing. And however you tend, my Instagram feed has, it has variety, but it's majority running. And then I throw in some family and other things that I do. But knowing like for the most part, every day, there's going to be some type of workout post that's thrown up there of, hey, this is, and to your point, not to brag about myself, but more just to, hey, let's all hold each other accountable and let's do this thing and let's encourage each other along the way,
Yeah. Especially in times like now where, for the longest time, we weren't able to have these longer group runs with other people because it's like people, whatever their circumstances is, weren't able to go out. You do these group runs, running stores weren't hosting these things like they used to. Right. So you can't have these kinds of community runs. So being able to use social media to have that community, like you said, of no, someone knows that I'm out doing this. And if I don't see the post, I'm going to text them and be like, hey, everything okay? Why didn't you do your run today? Kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. And I think you find, I find people that I've met that I've never met in person and I've developed this relationship with and this friendship with via social media is pretty amazing. And I start to follow people. And if you're not consistently showing up there too, like you're going to go off the radar from people. Cause again, you haven't really met them. You don't know them. And it's like, okay, after a couple, like no posts, I'll move on to someone else, So it's that community, wherever you're finding it. And right nowadays it's a lot via social media is huge and important. And you mentioned Annie because that's where we first got connected. Annie and I live very close to each other, but we first connected via Instagram. She was training for her first marathon and I was following her. I didn't even realize she was in my town. And I had messaged her to be like, hey, good luck in Chicago. And then we started talking and funny story, but her brother was my husband's roommate in college.
No way.
I had no idea. And I was telling my husband about this girl that I met on Instagram. And he was like, oh yeah, I know her. Like that's so-and-so's brother, like my roommate's brother. I'm like, what? Are you serious? So it's crazy what social media does and then transferred over to real life,
Yeah.
You become one of my closest friends. So
exactly. And it's one of those things where like, I look at like her post and your post and stuff like that. And it's straight motivation for me. It's like when I see you guys post a picture when it's, below zero and you're still out getting 10 to 12, the frosted tips, if you will, and the hair and everything. It's like, no, that gives me like the push. Like I already was going to be the stupid one that was also going to do it. But to me, it's like seeing, it's like, we're in this together. It's my last run on Saturday with my buddy Chad. It wasn't that cold. It was only like 16 or 17, which I'm sure people listening to it, they're like, what are you talking about? 16, 17.
Compared to the single and negative digits, that is a heat wave.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to break out the shorts. It's going to be a thing. But we ran into a new part of town because we were like, hey, we're doing the same thing, especially with the way like you have certain routes that you can just do because the roads are going to be clear and it's going to be safe to do. And because we had gotten the sun for a little while, we knew that, okay, there's going to be certain areas that are going to be open. We're like, hey, let's do something new. We need something fresh to kind of break up the monotony. And we ran through a town that we haven't run in probably in a couple years. And just seeing everyone out there with us, like just as cold and just as like, you weren't alone. Yeah. And you're just like, this is exactly what I need. And that's what I feel like when I'm scrolling through my social feed is I've found myself in the last probably like 6 months removing people that I followed just to follow and only like following people that kind of motivate me to kind of push to that next level.
Yeah, it is cool. And like I said, you get to know people and you get to expect posts from them and okay, what'd they do today? Where are we at? What are they looking at? So you hope that you can do a little bit of that too. I think not only for the accountability, but to help inspire and motivate too, because we're all in this together and we're all trying to figure out how to be resilient in this COVID, mess that we're in and this continually wanting to sign up for races or find something and then be knocked down and like, okay, that one's canceled. What's up next? How do I keep training? How do I keep doing this? So it helps to find the encouragement and support through community.
Yeah. And that was actually going to be my next point I was thinking of is how have you handled kind of this bounce back of, well, let's take one step back. How many races were you supposed to do last year that you weren't able to do?
I can't even tell you. I think I have probably 6 or 7 marathons, maybe more, that have been deferred. I've lost deferral code. I don't even know where it's at. Like, where in my email is what race that I've deferred for what time? I don't even know. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. But and the reason I ask that is, how do you, like, when those things happen? Because we have these like ups and downs where we're just like, I'm training for this. I had a couple. I wanted to PR my marathon last year. I was going to. I got a charity opportunity to run Boston, and I was just like, you know what, because I know I'm not fast enough yet to actually get into Boston this way. I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to train my hardest, and Boston is going to be my PR. Like, I'm not just going to show up there and run a 6-hour as a charity. Like, I want to earn it and be like, no, like, I'm going to do this hard. I trained my ass off to do this, and then Boston gets moved to the fall and then canceled. And then I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And so, like, my whole goal last year was to get a PR, and that didn't happen. And the constant conversation in my head is, how do I be consistent in my training when you keep having these like letdowns? So, like, how did you get through that of races getting canceled after canceled, but still saying, you know what, I'm still going to push through because of whatever's next?
Well, to your point, I think I went through seasons. I ebbed and flowed my way through last year and still am this year. With the first cancellation, that was April. I had a downhill race I was training for. I'd never run a downhill race. I was nervous, but hoping maybe a PR would come out of that one. And that was the first one. And then once you realize this was a thing, I think I took a step back from signing up for races last year. In the spring, I held off my fall calendar to kind of wait out and see what happened. I tried new things. So I think put the brakes on training for marathon and trying to set a PR in that, because that is sure discouraging when you train as hard as you can. And then you're like, for what? What do I have to show for this? I don't mind putting in the hard work and the time, but if I can't have it result to move forward, like that's hard. The grind is tough when you don't know if there's going to be a race to pay for it. So, I did a few new things in my running career that I'd never done last year, which was kind of cool to mix things up. I did a run streak because I didn't have a marathon I was training for that I then had to recover from. So what ended my run streak, I did find a race last August in Utah, downhill race that crushed me. And that was the end of my run streak. That marathon ended it because I couldn't walk the next day. I'm like, well, 200 some days of run streak and it's over, because I literally feel like a first-time marathoner after that race. So I did that. I did run streak. I did the Yeti Challenge, where I ran 4 miles, 4 hours for 24 hours, 5 miles.
Something like that.
Something like that. That was crazy intense and awesome. Like, I would have never done something like that. I ended up doing a virtual Ragnar race last year, which I did not know what to expect with that, because, I never done a Ragnar. That's on my bucket list. And this was a virtual one. And so we had a team together and we were waiting. We had a group and we had a text message like that we're on and off, and you predicted when that person would be done running, but you didn't really know because we're all in different states and running a distance, and we were assigned a distance. And then the anticipation and the anxiety that was like, okay, are they coming? And then you bust out of the gate by yourself on a street outside of your neighborhood and go flying down. And it was amazing though. It was so fun. And we were competing with 12 other teams, and we were competing against a guy team. We were a team of all girls, and we were neck and neck with this guy team. We ended up getting second. We didn't beat him, but there was some intense, it felt like a race.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that sounds super cool.
It was amazing. And finding to be able to get that race experience without having a race on the line was, for me, that's kind of what helped me through the beginnings of the pandemic last year, of the fix that you need sometimes of a race and a goal. And that was it. And then, as things started, dust settled a little bit, you were able to find races were happening but I think you couldn't count on them. And so that was the hard part. It's like, well, I might be able to do this race, but I don't know if it's actually going to go. Or I think around this month period, I might be able to find a marathon. But training was hard for that because you again didn't have an end date for sure this is going to happen. So my downhill marathon, I signed up 2 weeks before without even a 20 on my legs. Now I run all the time, so I'm like, I'll be fine. I was not fine. I mean, I did okay, but it was hard. But I got a new state and I got a new experience. So that was the goal that time. The goal was getting a race in a new state, not a time.
Yeah.
So you shift your goals, but you still have goals, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that you right there, you ended it well, is that you shift your goals and kind of what your mindset is going to be and what the purpose is going to be. There has been so many races where I've had that, where it's just like, you know what, there's a race this weekend in a state I haven't done, and it'd be pretty cool to travel there. Let's do whatever. Like, let's just do it. You know, I'm definitely not ready for it.
Yeah.
I talked about on a recent episode that I called it overconfident. I just did a race down in Louisiana, and it was a 39 miler. The longest run, I hadn't run that long in about 2.5 years.
Wow.
The longest run in my training was 18 miles that I did once. I was like, I don't know what in me was just like, pace, I can.
You can do this. You've done this multiple times. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, like what's the big deal? Like, okay, it's in Louisiana. It's probably flat. Not flat. You know, it rained the entire time, so it was just mud. It was a trail race, just nothing but mud everywhere. And you're just like, yeah, this is, and it was so funny. Like, you get to a point where you just laugh and you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to have a good time. This is going to be, we're going to have a good time out here, and we're just going to call it what it is.
Well, I think that's it, right? Like you just, you have a different goal and a different mindset in the end. And ultimately you're still doing something very cool. You're still, running and running with purpose to some extent, but a different purpose, not a fast purpose, but that's okay. Like not every race has to be a PR.
Yeah. And so it's interesting you say that, because you kind of get in that mentality, or at least you can get caught up in that, especially in like social media or stuff. You see people are like, hey, these people are faster than me, or they're going further than me, and they're doing whatever. And it's like, but that's their goals. That doesn't have to be your goals and your motivation. If you want to get there, by all means, put in the work and get there, because that's what people did to get to the point where they're at. But you need to have your own goals. Because if you don't, if you're living somebody else's dream, you're never going to be satisfied with, no matter how you do.
Yes. I think for me as a running coach, when you take what my experience is and now apply it to running coaching, I think one of the biggest things that I have seen athletes struggle with, not even through COVID, just in general, is that idea of fast and as quick as you can be. And for me, trying to get these athletes to see, yes, you have to go fast, but you have to actually go slow in order to go fast. And like those recovery days. And I mean, if you get into the science of how your muscles develop based on what workout you're doing, like you actually do need to go slow and you cannot make gains and go fast if you don't have those slow days. And so even for my postings that I do, because I mean, you love going fast. You're like, hey, look how fast I am. Look at what I did. Like that's cool to put out there. But actually, like, let's look at how slow I went today. And this was huge. And my legs were still tired and I went so much slower, So I think helping athletes see that piece of it, and like what works for them and what is the right recipe for their body, their training, their goals, and not to get caught up in this comparison game. I mean, that's huge. Comparison is hard sometimes. Social media, sometimes people only put up a snippet. They don't show you the real, the highs and lows of everything. And so you need to see it all. You need the full picture to really get an idea of what works.
Not that we want to talk about Annie this whole time, because I'm sure she'll absolutely love hearing her name 15 times in this podcast. But she had posted something, I think the other day, where she went out and then it was icy and she only got like a mile or something and then finished it on the treadmill. But like those kinds of things, and that's why I think I connect with her so well, is it's just true and honest. Like, no, I went out here, this sucked. It did not feel good. I needed something else to do. And then after that, everything felt better. But to your point is, a lot of people don't post or share those things. They only show the highlights. So then when people are looking to them for motivation and only see like, hey, they always have great days. Things are always great for them.
That's not reality.
Right. That's not for me. Like, I'm not doing that. So I must be doing something wrong. Or maybe I'm not a runner, you can't classify kind of thing. And we get into all these like head spaces where we don't believe in ourselves. And then once you do that, that's a dangerous road.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, even about being consistent, one of the things that when I was thinking about it is like, you need to make yourself a priority. And I think it's hard sometimes. Again, in these times, kids are home. There's so much going on that we're juggling as humans that we didn't have to juggle a year ago. And, not letting yourself get lost in the mix and making sure that you're putting yourself out there as a priority too, which I think is sometimes you feel selfish doing it, or if you feel, you just think that you got to work on everyone else, but making yourself a priority is also an important piece.
Yeah. I can imagine right now too, like having a family. We don't have kids, so really I just have my 10-pound dog that I have to worry about, which even then she can be a handful sometimes, where I think she's sleeping over there. But I can imagine like having that feeling, not even a reality because it's not necessarily true. It's that feeling of, I don't have time for this because I have all of these other things. It's like, well, your responsibility is not really much change. You just kind of have to like shift how you're doing some things. It's making new adjustments to like a new plan. When people first start training or running, you have to make adjustments in your schedule to even allow that. So you've already done it once. Just take it big picture and not get so caught up on the individual details that you just give up, because it can just be overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And I do. I mean, like I said, not everybody has to work out in the morning, but I do think morning workout has its place, because I think otherwise life can get in the way, and we're throwing curveballs time and time again. And so figuring out how to work through that. But if you can get your workout and your running done in the morning, that won't get pushed to the side, because it's real easy to let it go push to the side when you've got kids pulling on you and phone calls and animals needing to go out and whatever it is,
everything there, because it's so easy. And so many people talk about this, whether it's exercising or fitness of sorts, or journaling or reading or praying and meditating, whatever it is, like all of it is best done in the morning.
I know. So true.
Because it just helps it helps renew your mind in one way or another, however that kind of feeds you. But you're focused on that, because once our brains start turning on, once you pick up that phone and start looking at things, the notifications never stop.
They don't.
And it's funny, is a lot of it is self-induced. Like it took me a long time. I don't even think I have it here. I had a small phone. I switched from my iPhone and I just got tired of distractions and stuff, and I got a Palm phone. It's the size of a business card, super tiny phone, and I used it for about a year until just the service itself wasn't great on it, so I had to get rid of it. But the idea was my phone was used to text and call people. Like it had the full Android app store. I could download apps, I could do everything, but it was so small that you didn't want to. You didn't want to stare at like a tiny screen and scroll through things. And that like freeing helped me realize like, no, I don't need all of these distractions. So when I ended up having to get a new phone, like on my homepage, I have 4 apps at the very top. Those are the apps that I use all the time. So I have the 4 apps at the bottom, 4 apps at the top. That's it. And I have almost only notification I have on is calendar and text messages. The rest of the stuff, I'm like, it doesn't need to bother me. When I need it, I'll go find it.
Right.
And I think we can get so caught up with, we're worried about what's going on and we need to make sure we stay in touch. But to your point, if you don't make yourself a priority, you need to be the first thing that has that attention. And if you're not the thing of attention, you can't help anyone else. The flight attendant thing, you need to secure your mask before you get to help others.
Well, yeah, so true.
Because you can't help people when you're not helping yourself.
Well, my husband has realized too, he's just succumbed to my running. I mean, it used to be, are you running today? And now it's like, when are you running today?
Yeah.
But he's
How
realized.
long are you running today?
My daughter, every single night when I put her to bed, she's like, how long is your run tomorrow? When are you going? When are you leaving? When will you be back? I mean, that is part of our bedtime routine, are those 3 questions. How long I'm running, when I'm leaving, and when I'm coming back. Like it's just, they've accepted it. Mom's a runner. But they've also realized if I don't run, I actually go run, Mom.
Please run, Mom.
Yes, and my husband too. It's like they realize it's good for my mental sanity, not just my physical, but my mental. And it makes me a better mom, a better wife, a better person all around when I have taken care of myself in that way. Then I can devote to others and not be stressed out or yelling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still do all those things.
Yeah.
But I'm better if I have my
right. Yeah. It's just you do it with a happier tone.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't work on the sarcasm and the sass unless you have the run. If not, it just comes off mean. Oh, that's so
true.
great. So kind of switching gears, but not. I'm always very interested in people that are on like the 50 state journey or the world majors and stuff like that, because it's a big commitment, not just physically, but there's a ton of time involved. There's a ton of money involved. It's that like races are not cheap, and neither is traveling and hotels and Airbnbs and flights and the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm going to ask the question that I hate people when they ask me, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Bring it.
What was your favorite race so far?
I talked about this yesterday too. So I've had time. I was prepped. I didn't even know I was being prepped. I was. My favorite marathon, and I wrote it down because I want to make sure I got it right. I've run 48 marathons, and I've done 36 states. And my favorite is New York. So I have found I am a big city, big crowd racer. I love the vibe of the crowds, the energy. It boosts me. It keeps me going. And New York was absolutely incredible. So I would like to do it again to see if I feel the same about it as I did the first time. I think I tried 3 or 4 years to get into New York before it happened. And so there was some anticipation that had been built up for it as well. And so I'd love to have another chance to see if I still would say that answer again. But that's my favorite. I ran Berlin last year, 2019, and that was my first international one. And that one was pretty incredible just because of that fact alone. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, my husband is a huge traveler. And so he, again, while there are places that we've gone maybe that he wouldn't have chosen to travel to for my purpose of running, he has embraced it and appreciated what we can learn, because I think that there's a lot of culture and a lot of different things that you learn by seeing different areas of the country. And I get to witness it by running. He gets to witness it by, I'll never forget when we went to DC and I ran that race. He went through the monuments and like took pictures and all that while I was running. And like after the fact, we would talk about it. And I'm like, well, you did what? Like he saw so many things that I didn't get to see because he was waiting for me, you know?
That's so funny. It's so true, because Kayla, my wife, I do the same thing where she's like, she'll see different areas, and there's certain areas like, and I always pick on it, and I apologize for anyone from the city, but like Birmingham, Alabama or Jackson, Mississippi, like there's no reason for me to ever go back there, but it was pretty cool to run through it a little bit, you know?
Yes. Well, and what a cool way to say that you're going to visit all 50 states by running a marathon through it. You know, I mean, I've had the question of, does every state have a marathon? Like, you know, people are like, oh, really? You can find a marathon in every state? I'm like, I can, but I do spend a lot of time. I mean, it's become a full-time job. I spend a lot of time researching the states and researching the races, because if I'm only going to do one, I want to do the best one in that state.
Yeah.
And I've had to embrace these smaller, not as populated races too. So it's pulled me out of my comfort zone and what I would choose to do. Because, you know, my husband's always like, well, what are you going to do once you're done with this journey and you're going to stop running? I'm like, well, of course I'm not going to stop running, obviously. Yeah. But, you know, I can focus on some of the ones that were fun. Try New York again, or try and go do a different, because I do just love that. I love the big ones, but the small ones, they're fun. They have a different vibe. They're really cool. I have really learned to embrace the smaller races. It just wouldn't be what my first preference was probably. Yeah. But I'll never forget, it was a Virginia maybe race that, you know, I mean, there's like 50 people at the start and we're praying and singing an anthem, and then the race starts and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. There were stairs in that marathon. I mean, it was beautiful, but I was like, wait, what? We're running downstairs right now? Okay. I mean, it's just the things that we went through a battlefield. It was hilly as all get out. Like, but the history that you got to see that I would have never done if I wasn't trying to run a marathon in that state, you know? So it's a cool journey and everyone should try it.
Yeah. Everyone do it. But no, I was going through your state list and kind of matching up with mine to be like, okay, what races have we done? We've done a ton the same time. We've ran the same races multiple times. So
oh my gosh.
You ran New York in 2017. I also ran New York in 2017. I actually ran Berlin that same year. But you did a back-to-back in Baltimore and then New Jersey and Atlantic City.
Did you do those?
I did Delaware and Atlantic City.
Oh my gosh.
And my pacer, that was the pacer for Atlantic City, he had run Baltimore the day before. Yeah. So we were talking about the Baltimore race the whole time. And then I see yours and you said like the back-to-back. And I was just like, wait a second. I was like, She didn't also do Delaware, did she?
That is insane.
But yeah, so I tried to write them all down. We did Myrtle Beach was the exact same, New Jersey, and then New York. All three of those we did the exact same days. Like we raced the same race.
Yeah, we raced the same race.
Which is just,
oh my gosh,
just
that's
absolutely
insane.
nuts. But we've done a ton of them that are very similar. Like the Flying Pig was my first marathon I ever did. And then I've done like Go St. Louis and Mississippi Blues. I just did this past year, but
that was another back-to-back one for me. Mississippi Blues.
What did you do? What was your other back-to-back? I was trying to
Alabama Gulf Shores.
That's right. We
that one was tough because sorry, I'm interjecting. No. You say races, and I'm put immediately into that race, and I am picturing myself running that race. That one was hard because it was my first back-to-back. I didn't know what to expect with the second one, and so I was like, well, I guess I'll just start here and I'll see. I have no idea what to expect, and then we were maybe halfway through, and somebody said something to the effect of, "You're like the third girl," and I'm like, "Don't tell me that. I am supposed to be running this one like as calm as I can because I have another one tomorrow, and now you're telling me I'm the third girl in this race." So that was a struggle because like my competitive juices from that side wanted to go, but I knew I needed to not because I had a race the next day that I've never done this before. But yeah, that was a hilly one.
Yeah,
and it rained.
Mississippi was not easy.
No.
I was very surprised, and I have bad things about Mississippi, but because we drove there 2017 maybe, and it got canceled. We got all the way down there. There was like a snowstorm and stuff all the way down the East Coast, and we were worried about ice. And when we pulled into Jackson, we're up here. I don't drive well with it because I'm from Florida, but my wife has lived up north her whole life. So she was fine driving, but basically Jackson was a sheet of ice, the entire city.
Oh, no.
And so we got into the hotel and they said, "Hey, we're still planning the race, but we'll probably be delayed. We'll probably just start at 2 hours later." I'm like, that kind of sucks because, nutrition and that sort of thing when you're on a schedule. But I was like, you know what? We're already here. Let's make it a thing. And I woke up at 4:00 that morning on my alarm and got an email that says race has been canceled. So we literally we packed up and drove all the way back to Ohio after driving out of Jackson.
That is a disappointment right there.
Yeah. And then I did it last year. And last year it was on February 29th. So it was just like, oh, cool. It's a leap year race. Maybe they'll do something fun. They did nothing fun. The aid stations were garbage. It was way too hot. Like they didn't have enough water in aid stations, and it was super hot and dry that day. And the same kind of thing is I had back-to-backs. I was heading to, I did Little Rock, Arkansas the next day.
Okay.
But I was just like, I convinced a guy, I met him at a race in Texas. He was a listener of my old podcast. He said he was running the same race I did. We got together and we just kept in contact. And I was like, "Hey, I'm doing these back-to-back races. You want to do it too?" Or no, he was doing Jackson. And I said, "Hey, there's a race the next day.
Join me for another one."
Like, how about you do the other one too?" And he's like, of course, we're just stupid. Actually, we're a special kind of stupid because he's just like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And because he lives in Georgia. So he's like, it wasn't that far of a drive to do it. But so we were doing it and he's faster than I am. So it was one of those things where he had never done back-to-backs before. And I had to reel him in like, "Hey buddy, we're not busting it in this one because it's going to be tough." But even then, like his slowing down was still pretty quick. So we had a great first race, like, with the conditions and stuff like that. And then the second race, it was just like, I just need to get through this. But Little Rock was an amazing race, an absolutely amazing race. So it kind of made up for the crap hole of Jackson. But city was nice. People were nice. Race was not organized well. But I wanted to kind of talk about those back-to-backs is obviously you did more sets of back-to-backs. What do you think about those? Like, not from like a physical standpoint of actually getting them done. Because when I tell people about it, they go, "You're a crazy person." It's like, how do you tell yourself through your head that this is something that I should try to do?
Well, I mean, any marathoner, who tries a marathon? I mean, we're a different kind of crazy. We're a different kind of special. So I think, it goes back to motivation and seeing other people do kind of crazy things and thinking, "Hey, I want to join that club. I want to be a part of that crowd." Not everyone feels that way.
And most people are sane and we're not.
I have a friend. So with this whole 50 states journey, once we started having kids, my husband wasn't free to just travel with me to all the races like he was pre-kid. And so he would stay back. And then, so I had a friend who joined me on this journey for a short period of time, but they are some of my most fun memories. She busted her Achilles. She's a CrossFitter, busted her Achilles, and then has really not recovered from that to go back to the marathoning world. She is a challenge junkie. So the idea of doing challenges was up her alley. But I wouldn't say she loved running as much. And so, but for that time frame, we did the Goofy challenge together. That was my first attempt at a back-to-back. And it was amazing. And so I usually pick one of the races as like, just go have fun with it and then see what you can do with the other one. And so
Disney was definitely like that. The Goofy is so awesome because you see so much, like, because the half and full course are so very similar, that whole beginning of the race. It's like you can kind of enjoy it on the second day. Like I'm gonna run the half, pretty decently, and then just be like, we're gonna have some fun in this form. I'm gonna high five every character I see. I'm gonna take a picture in front of the castle. Yeah.
I think going back to that Baltimore Atlantic City race, I ran with my sister. It was her first marathon. And so I ran with her in that Baltimore one. And so I knew going into that race that was just going to be hey, let's get carried through this thing and let's run with this. So I think I love, it's probably why I became a coach. I love watching other people push their body to a limit. My company name is Stretch Run Coaching. And it kind of came from this idea of pushing people through the stretch run, through the point where you thought, like, I can't do this anymore. Wait, no, you can actually. Like your mind is stronger than you think it is. And so getting people to push past any limit that they thought they had, because our bodies are amazing and our minds are amazing. So being able to run with an athlete that you've trained, and in this case, it was my sister, but being able to be there with her and support her through that course and do everything that I could to get, she hit the wall, we discovered later, at mile 10. Mile 10, she's like, and this is her first marathon, and we didn't realize what was happening at the time, because who hits a wall at mile 10?
Yeah.
And so it was a rough, like 3 or 4 mile stretch there that in my head, I'm like, what is happening? Like, oh my gosh, why is she dying right now? I'm like, what is going on? And then we got through that point, and then she was able, like, we reeled it in, we shifted a little bit on our pacing, and we changed some goals, and like we talked through it, but she did great for the rest of the race. But it was a rough stretch very early on in that race that I was like, whoa, this is going to be a hard one today,
Yeah.
But then going to the next one, it's a crazy experience. I think that the runner's high you get, and then like, okay, well, let's go shower and hurry because we got to drive 4 hours and we got to hit the expo at the next race to make sure that we can actually get the bib in time and like go to sleep and get some food because we're doing this again tomorrow, And I felt bad for her because I'm like, this is not normally how you recover from your first marathon. I'm so sorry. You need to hurry up. Like we've got to get out of here.
I know you want to relax and rest, but we have a time crunch because the casino is going to close the expo and we need to get there.
Yes. We need to go. So again, like going the next day, I had no idea what to expect, but I knew my legs, while tired from the hills of Baltimore and being on them for a long time, they weren't pushed to the max in the physical, like endurance piece for me. And so, you start out and then the legs just wanted to move. And I actually did pretty well in that Atlantic City race. And it was pretty fun. Like
I saw your time and stuff like that. And the first thing I had was, how did you do that in 40-mile-an-hour winds? That was the windiest run I have ever been. Like, I remember being on the little boardwalk thing and like sand hitting you in the face.
Yeah.
And like, this is not fun.
Well, I don't remember exactly what my pace was, but I know I started at a certain pace and then I picked up pace as the race went on until I didn't. And then when I didn't, it was like, oh my gosh, put your head down. The hat is blowing off, like on the boardwalk and it was a long stretch back.
Yeah.
Like once you hit the boardwalk coming back to the finish,
it was like a 5K or something like that back on the boardwalk.
And it was hard because I felt like I had to put my head down, but I qualified for Boston in that race. And that was my carrot. I was looking at the time. I knew I was for me, a pride thing and not to brag. It wasn't a bragging thing. It was a personal pride thing. Like, to be able to say I qualified for Boston on the second of a back-to-back, that's what kept me moving, because those wins were tough. It was hard. And I remember my sister being there at the end, and that's what I said. I'm like, I'm qualified. I'm getting BQ on this baby. I'm like crying as I'm like heading to the finish, because I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is why I do this. Like, not to qualify for Boston, but just the feeling of accomplishing something that you never thought possible, and like being able to do that. So apply it to my coaching. I absolutely love, I mean, I've worked with probably over 70 athletes now in my time span as a coach, and watching them be able to accomplish goals that they just never thought possible, and seeing something in them that they didn't realize they had, and like being like, hey, let's look at you. Actually, I think you can run this marathon pace. Let's get you there by the pacing that I set up and the structure and the plan that we create. But you have a lot in you that you didn't realize you had. And so I love that part of it, being able to help others see things that they didn't know they had. So it's a great, I love it for myself, and I love it for my athletes.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I think that's a good place to wrap it up with a bow. I mean, having people being that kind of hype person and making sure, like, kind of seeing things in people that they couldn't see themselves. Kind of like you unlock your potential and just really realize like you have a lot in there, and you're kind of holding yourself back, and having a coach such as you to kind of be like, no, like, let's do this. Let's make it happen.
Well, and it goes back to that accountability, however you need it. But in this form, and that we're talking about with a coach-athlete relationship, knowing that you have a coach checking on you on a daily basis. Hey, did you do your run today? Hey, how'd it go? How'd you feel? Where we at? You know, that's going to keep you accountable. Even if you don't have a partner that you can meet up with, knowing that you have a virtual coach that's going to be checking in on you and touching base with you is so helpful. So
100%. How can people get in how can people get in touch with you if they want more information about your coaching, or just really just to connect?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram account. It's at Stretch Run Coaching. And then I have a website, www.stretchruncoaching.com. So you can find out more on the coaching front on the website, and just day to day, here's what I'm doing on Instagram. So,
and we'll include all those in the show notes, so everybody be able to click those, so you don't have to worry about tech or writing down while you're driving and all of that stuff, or even when you're running. You don't want to be thinking about this while you're running. But yeah, thanks so much for being on the show today, Kelly. It was a really good conversation.
Yes, it was great. I told you I could talk running all day long.
Well, don't worry. I'm perfectly okay with doing that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So to everyone else, you can reach out to me on all of the socials at flores.run. Leave a subscribe, leave a review for the podcast. If you like conversations like this, want more of them, you know, we don't do as many running ones as I'd like, because I love talking about running, but you know, anything about purpose, intentionality, you know, all of those things. Let me know in the comments. Shoot me a DM on the socials. We'll get people on that you think have a cool story. That's how Kelly got on. And he was like, you need to get her on the show because she has cool things to say, cool stories to share. So that's what happened. You can visit my website at www.flores.run. You can purchase Hangry gear always at wearehangry.com. Help support those living with the issue of hunger in your community. I think that's about everything here, but thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time. We'll see you guys next week.